Okay, let's take a little deeper look into contribution margin ratio, and so on. In fact, let's add one. Let's start with variable expense ratio. Variable expense ratio, if we have a contribution margin ratio of 40%, that's contribution margin divided by sales. Well, if we take variable expenses and divide it by sales, we can get a variable expense ratio, which in this case is at the Racing Bicycle Company is 60%, or 60% of their sales goes into variable expenses. And so we can use that in different ways. So let's take a look at several different problems as we go through some scenarios that managers might come across. We'll start with one that you're familiar with and work into ones that are a little more complicated. So let's start with what is the profit impact if Racing Bicycle can increase unit sales from 500 to 540 by increasing the monthly advertising budget by $10,000. So this you could probably do in your head, right? I mean, we've been talking about this long enough now that you start to think about it. You go, well, okay, they're going to have 40 more bikes, and every bike means a contribution margin of $200. So contribution margin of $200, I'm going to have 40 more bikes, 200 times 40, that's $8,000. And how much am I spending on advertising? $10,000. So that's not a good idea. We don't want to do that. Now we could put this into the spreadsheet and the long form here. If we do, we can see that the sales is 270, variable expenses goes up, contribution margin goes up, fixed expenses goes up by the $10,000 because we added the advertising, but net operating income goes down. So we increase sales by $20,000 and we cut net operating income, profit, by $2,000. So that wasn't a good idea. We spent more on the advertising than the advertising brought in sales. So we would have to expect that $10,000 worth of advertising to sell more than 40 bikes. At least, I'm sure you can do this in your head, 50 bikes would be the number for the proper break-even point for the advertising. And you could probably do that in your head. But some of these, it starts to get a little more complex because you get multiple variables going on. So we don't want to just say, oh, this is easy, you just can do it in your head by knowing a couple numbers. Let's take some examples that are a little bit more difficult that we want to be thinking about. So what is the profit impact if Racing Bicycle can use higher quality raw materials, thus increasing variable costs by $10 a unit, to generate an increase in unit sales from 500 to 580? So, of course, we know contribution margin at $200 a bike, 80 bikes, that's $16,000. That sounds pretty good for $10 per unit increase. Now, we're already spending $300 per unit in variable costs. So 3 to 310, oh, this starts to sound pretty good. But let's do the math. If you put it into a spreadsheet here, you can look at it as sales. Sales go from 250 to 290. Variable expenses are no longer 300, they're 310, and 580 units times 310 is 179,800. We have a larger contribution margin. We have same fixed expenses, but we have much higher net operating income of 30,200. So a sales increase of $40,000 in this case has increased our net income by $10,000. And so that is something we would want to do. We like the raw materials. We do not like the advertising so far. But we don't have to stop there. We can start running scenarios of all kinds of different things once we have a cost volume profit relationship established. For example, what is the profit if RBC, the Racing Bicycle Company, cuts its selling price $20 per unit, increases its advertising budget by $15,000 a month, and increases its sales from $500 to $650 per month? So now we have a compound question. Not quite as easy to do in your head. Don't even try. Just simply put the numbers into the spreadsheet and figure out what the answer is. And clearly the math is not the question. You just have to organize yourself to put the numbers in. So in this case, we have an increase in the units from 500 to 650. That's going to be an important factor. Obviously, we have more units, so we have higher variable expenses, which gives us a higher contribution margin. We have fixed expenses that have gone up now, so we've got 15,000 more in fixed expenses, and so we have a net operating income of $2,000. So a sales increase in this case increased sales by $62,000, and fixed costs increased by $15,000, but net income only increased $2,000. So we did an awful lot to get a very small amount of return in this particular case. So do the numbers and go through the scenarios as your manager in your own firm or when you go forward. So another example, if the profit impact at RBC, one pays a $15 sales commission per bike sold instead of paying salespeople flat salaries at the current total of $6,000 per month, and sales increase from 500 to 575. So we just put that in the spreadsheet. If we put it in the spreadsheet and look here, we will have 287,500 is the sales volume. We have 575 units at an additional $15 per unit. That $15 is the commission that we're throwing in the variable costs. So 181,500. We have decreased the fixed expenses by $6,000 because we're no longer paying them their straight salary. We're paying them in the variable costs. And so we have increased net operating income by $32,000. And when you look at it as the increase in sales, we have sales increase of 37,500, fixed expenses decreased by 6,000, and net operating income increased by $32,375. Well, that's quite an increase for a small change in your operations. So that's something we definitely would want to pay attention to. Let's see if there's another one here. I think there's one more. One more is, what if RBC has an opportunity to sell 150 bikes to a wholesaler without disturbing sales to any other customers or fixed expenses? What price would it quote to the wholesaler if it wants to increase its monthly profits by $3,000? So when we think about this, okay, so somebody wants to come in, I want a deal. You have capacity, it's assuming you have capacity to produce the bikes, and then it's like, well, I've got my fixed overheads, they're being paid, I'm not taking bikes away from my existing customers, and I want to make some money. How many bikes can I sell, or what price should I sell them at? This is a price question. So if we put it into the formula here of $3,000 divided by 150 bikes, that's $20 a bike, but the bikes cost me $300 a piece. So my profit would be $20. The $300 is the variable cost, and the selling price required to make my $3,000 is $320 per bike. And of course, you can see in the slide also that they've done the math. They've completed the math for you. So the 150 times 320 bike is 48. Variable cost would be 45. The increase in net operating income would be $3,000. So as you can see, contribution margin can set your profits if you don't have to pay fixed costs in a pricing situation. And there's lots of little nuanced questions you can answer about your business if you keep unit contribution margin and contribution margin ratio clear in your head, and you can make a lot of decisions on the fly on what's going on. How many of these do I need to sell? What's my break-even point? These kinds of things managers would really benefit from having. And of course, if you're a much larger firm, you're going to have this on all your products, so you at least know where to go to judge your decision on whether you should expand the line, cut the line, and so on. And we'll have other contribution margin questions. It kind of threads through the entire program. So that's enough on this particular lesson. Let's move on.